Welcome to Collections of Cinema.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Collections of Cinema.
Just FYI, we are recording for the first time with two cameras. That's Danielle's, and that's mine. Hello. And don't worry, I'm not wearing a shirt with Danielle's face on it. It's just Jim Carrey. Welcome to a new episode of Cock.
You don't want context for that?
What do you mean?
I should have never told you that, honestly. He's taking an insecurity that I had years and years and years ago, where I thought in some pictures I said that I had something that I like to call Jim Carrey face, where I felt like I looked like Jim Carrey. Yeah. Not to say that Jim Carrey is not a very well-looking, handsome man, because he is. I just don't want to look like Jim Carrey. And ever since then, he, if he sees Jim Carrey, he says it's me. Or now he wears that shirt and he holds our daughter and is like, "Look, Marley, it's mommy."
Yeah,
it's great.
It's funny.
It's great. I love it.
It's funny. It's funny. Okay, we are talking about Heat. Today, the 1995 crime thriller directed by Michael Mann, and arguably one of the best movies ever made, in my books.
Okay. I don't know that I would agree. I very much enjoyed it, but I don't know that I would agree that it's
a
the best
stacked cast led by Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Tom Sizemore, Jon Voight, and Val Kilmer. And some other great supporting cast members like Ted Levine and
Trejo.
Yeah, Danny Trejo and Hank Azaria, thank you. Natalie Portman, William Fichtner. I can't even tell that many great people. We have this cool 4K Blu-ray here. And it's like a lot of Michael Mann movies shot on film, and it's shot mainly at night. There's some scenes that are on daylight, but I would say like the last part of the movie is shot at night, and therefore they obviously the shooting on film at night is hard because light is missing, and so there's some grain, but I feel like that the 4K transfer is pretty good, and watching it on the beamer, on the projector, was pretty cool, and I just love this movie. So let's talk about the plot quickly. No, sorry, before we go into the plot. Budget was $60 million, which is actually nothing.
Not that much, yeah.
Especially compared to how many awesome people are in the cast. The box office was $187 million, which is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
The movie was written and directed by Michael Mann, and he also wrote a book for a second part, or co-wrote it, and the second part is supposed to come out soon.
I didn't know that. I didn't know there was going to be a second.
We'll talk about it a little later. But let's get into cast's plot.
The plot.
Can you tell a plot?
Yeah, I mean, there's not that much of a
It's a simple
plot.
Yeah.
It's a heist movie.
It's a heist movie. It's about a crew of people who...
Yeah, and they've all worked together for seemingly a while because they have a groove with each other.
Yep.
And they're just pulling off different heists, and nobody can seem to catch them.
Right. And one of the heists, the movie starts basically with a heist on a money transporter, and one of their new members who they just recruited, called, his name is pretty cool, Waingro, is just Waingro.
Okay, but I have to ask, because that actually bothered me in the movie. Is his name Wayne Grow?
No.
Or his name is like together Wayne Grow?
Waingro.
Okay, because at some point Pacino was saying his name, and I'm like, is it just like a Pacino-ism? Like the way he says his name is like Wayne Grow.
No, it's Waingro.
Or does he actually, like, is his name actually Wayne Grow? Okay.
And he basically goes rogue and kills and starts killing one of the police officers that they hold hostage.
Yeah.
And then they end up killing all three of them.
Yep.
And that's how basically the hunt for them starts off, with Al Pacino leading the main
Yeah,
investigation.
but also somebody overheard something. That was like the thing that someone overheard something that they were saying.
But
and
the killing of the three police officers basically started Al Pacino to lead the investigation.
Yeah.
And so Al Pacino is starting to hunt them basically, and slowly is gathering information on the group. And then at a dinner where they all are and having dinner with their families, he's basically spying on them and trying to get information of each of them. But Robert De Niro is a mystery to him because he doesn't know him. He doesn't know, he's seemingly not from LA. And so he tries to get more information. And at some point they are following him on a highway with helicopters, and Al Pacino tracks him down and then just like casually tells him
if he can buy him a cup of coffee.
Which is one of the best scenes ever. So the freeway scene how it starts with Al Pacino in the helicopter, and then he gets a car from one of his colleagues, and the music alone builds the scene super well because it's super tense, and then he pulls him over on the middle of the freeway or on the side of the freeway and walks up with the gun loaded in his hand, and Robert De Niro just sits chill in there and doesn't even acknowledge him really, because he already knows.
I mean, it took him a second to even, I found that kind of interesting. Like, he rolled his window down, or it was already down, I think.
Yeah, he rolled it down,
And Pacino said something to him, like, how you doing, or something like that, or like
he doesn't even
some sort of,
he
doesn't even acknowledge his existence that he's there. And it wasn't until he said, can I buy you a cup of coffee? Even then he hesitated, but still didn't look at him and hesitate. And then he looked at him and he's like, sure.
Let's go. And you would have, you see that Al Pacino is holding a gun, and you would assume that we would cut in to the car seeing Robert De Niro holding a gun, but we don't see that. So it's not happening, which also tells you that Robert De Niro is totally in charge of the scene. And then they have one of their, I think it's only two scenes they have together basically in the movie, and this is one of them, was sitting together at the like this little truck of coffee place, and are talking with each other. And it's such a great scene because it's basically Al Pacino telling Robert De Niro, hey, I know what you're doing. Yeah. Stop it.
And it's also De Niro telling Pacino, I know you know what I'm doing. Like, he basically admits to everything he's doing without admitting it. Yeah. And it's basically just like, I'm just going to keep doing it. Yeah. I liked the one line where at the end of their conversation, Pacino was saying something like, he was telling him there's like one of two ways this could go, essentially. And at the end of that, he's like, it's the only way I know how to do things. Like, it's all I know how to do. Like, getting people like you that's all I know how to do. And De Niro responds with the same response, like, this is all I know how to do. And
if it comes to, and also it's basically the last thing, that if it comes to the point where there's a shootout between us, then I won't hesitate to put a bullet into your head. Yeah. Essentially. So that's basically them meeting up. But before that, there was also a scene where De Niro leads them on and looks who is basically following them and tracking them, because they are starting, that's prior to that scene, they're trying to break into like a safe and at night, and they are being tracked by police, and the police makes a mistake and the noise, so De Niro is like, okay, let's fucking abandon that shit. And so he knows there's somebody after him. And so they set like a little thing up where they say, we'll meet at this point in the middle of like this shipyard or whatever it is, like this container.
Yeah, it's a shipyard.
Yeah. And they're not meeting up there. They're putting them up there so they can look at them, who is after them. And it's a really cool scene. So they play cat, mouse, and cat throughout the movie. And so they plan this bank heist, and it comes to the bank heist where they are like putting a wrong lead to Al Pacino and their people, and they pull off this bank heist with three people, so De Niro and Sizemore and Val Kilmer. And the heist itself, like in the bank, is not that. It's pretty standard.
It's
they go
a
in,
standard bank heist.
Get the money, and then walk out. But what happens then in the middle of downtown LA is one of the greatest scenes in cinematic history, in my opinion. It's one of the greatest, most realistic shootout scenes that was ever put on film. And I'm saying that by quoting some of like military weapon specialists. Val Kilmer is still shown to people in the military how you change a magazine, how you lock and load a gun, and how you shoot, because he does it in such a professional way, and it shows. And the sound design, how the weapons sound in like the downtown area surrounded by skyscrapers, it's so fucking tense. They're surrounded by police. They're trying to get out. Their driver get killed. And then they just run down the street and try to escape the police that basically comes from back and front. And it's such a great fucking scene.
Yeah. I mean, also shitty for the one guy, their driver, who he basically...
He has a great side story.
He knew him. He has a great side story. He knew him from... It's the Allstate insurance guy.
Yeah.
De Niro knew him from, back in prison.
Yeah.
I guess in Folsom or one of the places he served.
Yeah.
And...
He
this guy
basically
finally, is getting on his feet. Essentially, he found this job in this diner that De Niro happens to frequent. And once the whole Wade Grow, was that his name? Wayne Grow.
Shit happens.
Wayne Grow basically gives them up. He's a rat at some point and gives them up just try to save himself. And so he is no longer there to be his driver. And De Niro basically convinces this guy to work for them again because he's done it before. Where it's like, how fucking shitty is that? This dude is just getting back on his feet. He got a job. He's and and then he dies.
Yeah, and then Trejo also gets killed because he gets forced to give up information. And so after the bank heist, there's still an hour to go of the movie. It's a long movie. It's almost 3 hours long. But it's they don't waste any second, in my opinion. It's not there's some scenes that are slower, but I think it's such a well-paced movie. It's all necessary
to the story, I feel.
Right. It's such a well-paced story. There's no scene that is unnecessary, and it's just so well edited. And after the heist, one of them is killed, so only De Niro and Val Kilmer are still basically alive. And Val Kilmer tries to go back to his wife and leave with her, but she got basically got by the police.
And they were trying to help her.
They're trying to use her to get to him,
but still help her. I mean, she's in an abusive relationship with him.
Yeah,
but
he clearly loves her, and he clearly loves their son. And he tried to change. There's one scene afterwards where he tried to change. But so he goes up to the house. She walks out there, and she gives a sign like, "Hey, you should leave." Mm-hmm. And that scene is heartbreaking because that's clearly the only he could have left, but he came back for her.
Yeah.
And he had to leave, and he gets away. And Heat 2 is basically part of Heat 2 is picking up what happens to him after that.
Okay.
But also part is prior to Heat. So it's a sequel and prequel in one.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And De Niro is trying to leave with his newfound girlfriend, love interest, whatever, but gets a hint by Jon Voight, his main information guy, that he knows where the one guy is who gave up all the information and basically fucked him.
Wade Grow.
No, and then also Wayne Grow. So
I keep saying Wade Grow.
He goes up to the one guy in the Hollywood Hills and kills him in cold blood, which is a great scene. And then he gets in the car and basically starts
They
driving.
were basically free. Like he was good.
Yeah.
Like he would have gotten away,
Yeah.
and he couldn't, like his pride got the best of him, and he couldn't just let it go.
Yeah.
And he put everything at risk and essentially did lose everything because he dies. But he also, lost this woman who actually had something with him.
That's
And it's so, the thing is, I don't feel for him at all.
Yes.
I'm happy for her because you can see, I love that scene when she's like waiting for him in the car, because she doesn't know why they stopped there. And she's waiting for.
She does kind of. She figures
it out. But that's the scene that I love so much, watching her figure it out, because when they get there, she clearly has no idea what they're doing there. He needs to do something. That's all she knows.
Yeah.
But I don't think she expected that he is gonna go kill somebody.
No.
And so it's just like this really cool aspect of seeing her reaction to, okay, he's going inside. She's just kind of sitting there waiting, like, okay, eventually we'll leave
And then
again.
all of a sudden-
And then all of a sudden, like, people start coming out of the back of the hotel where the
department is
fire
coming,
department
police
shows
is
up, the
running in.
police. And it's like all of this chaos is ensuing around her. And it's just like you see it in her face. Like, there's a scene where she's sitting in the car still, and you see it in her face, like, should I leave? Like, you can totally see she's thinking this would be my chance to go before he comes back.
Yeah. It's interesting because there's a scene prior to that where she basically knows what he did, and he admits to her that he robbed the bank and that people got killed, and she wants to leave, but he basically pressures her kinda into not, like, he's.
I mean, he totally does. He totally manipulates
and
her
it's
into staying.
right, and it's so interesting because as a young man, teenager, watching that movie, I was like, oh, Robert De Niro is so badass, he's so cool. But watching it now, he's such an ass.
Yeah.
He's a likable
He's a
character,
manipulator.
but he's a toxic asshole.
Yeah.
And he's a manipulator, and he cares for his people. Don't get me wrong, he cares for his
Well, and I
people.
think he cares about her. I
He
think
cares
he
about
actually
her.
has legitimate feelings
No,
for her.
he does, but in the end, it's only about him and only about he needs to survive. And he goes over dead bodies to do that.
Well, and that's exactly, it's perfect segue because I wanted to share the quote that he had said, I think twice in the movie. He said it once to Val Kilmer's character, and then he said it once to Pacino, because Pacino had asked him when they were sitting at the diner, what about these people that you have in your life?
Yeah.
And he said, don't let yourself get attached to anything you are not willing to walk out on in 30 seconds flat if you feel the heat around the corner. That's a crazy, like, that's a nuts quote.
That says
like,
it all. That says it all.
Yeah.
And it's so cool because you don't really know anything about him.
Yeah.
But you know, throughout the movie, you get to know so much of his character and who he is and what he does. And he's such a cool character, but he's such an asshole. And he's such a manipulative, toxic ass. But that also brings me back to Al Pacino's character, because he's also an asshole. And he does things that are also not cool. He has anger issues.
Yes, but for me, he was very likable. He's a likable asshole.
Only for one scene in the movie. And that's the scene when Natalie Portman, his stepdaughter or love interest's daughter, whatever. I don't know if they were married at some point. She tries to kill herself in his hotel room because he had to leave because he had a fight with his wife or girlfriend, whatever. And so Natalie Portman tries to kill herself. She's a young, she's
a teenager.
14, 15 maybe. She tries to kill herself in his bathroom in the hotel, and he basically saves her life by rushing her to the hospital. And that scene made me tear up because, first of all, we have a daughter now, and it's just more emotional. But also that shows what he really doesn't give in that moment. He doesn't give a shit anything anymore. Because in the scenes
the thing is, he's an asshole, but the really, really important stuff, he would give up everything else for those things.
Right.
And obviously he has he's married to his work. But at the same time, I mean, I understand his wife or girlfriend or whatever. I understand her perspective completely because he doesn't really show up for her. And so that, in that sense, he's totally in the wrong. But I also feel like I agreed with him in some sense when he said, I mean, I told you when we started this. And if that's really the case, then, he said, I'm married to my work. He basically told her, this is my priority. And this is my life. And he's, especially in LA in the 90s, I mean.
No, sure. But he's not a great character, but he turns around and he totally shows up for when it happens, and it matters so much. And it's such a great scene because you feel like, why do we need to know so much about his character? We technically don't know, but it gives so much more context to why he does what he does, because he's generally a good person, a decent human being who really cares about the people around himself. So he's the polar opposite of Robert De Niro while sharing some similar traits. And it's really interesting because those two characters work so well together, and the way Pacino and Robert De Niro portray them, it's like movie magic. If they're both on screen, it's just like so fucking good. But in the end, he goes to Waingro, kills him, and that bites him in the ass because that basically gets him killed. And the last scene in this movie is so perfect. So the last scene is on LAX. Robert De Niro is basically on foot, running away, chased by Al Pacino, and Al Pacino ends up killing him. And Robert De Niro says to him, his last words are, "Told you I'm not going back in."
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I'm not going back to prison. While he reaches for his hand, Al Pacino takes his hand and watches him die, and is there for him in his last moments. And then the Moby soundtrack starts.
It's interesting because it feels like Al Pacino, even though he is catching criminals, he still finds a way to somehow like sympathize with them in some way. I mean, probably not all of them. I mean, he talked about a few criminals from his past where obviously he wouldn't have sympathized with them. But people like De Niro, I feel like he finds a way to kind of sympathize with them and like humanize them a little bit and not just treat them as, okay, you're scum or whatever, but try to reason with them, and it feels genuine. It doesn't feel like cop trickery.
Because he knows, he's a smart guy. He knows that he's not the reason for people getting killed.
Yeah.
And he tries to avoid that. So he knows that, and he knows that there's a...
I mean, with
more
the
or less,
exception.
More or less.
He killed 2 people.
and he killed a lot of people at the third heist, basically.
Yeah.
But he knows that there is a guy around the Wingro who is a murderous asshole. So he's aware of that. But yeah. The soundtrack alone is really great. You can listen on it everywhere for streaming, and I think it's such a great soundtrack, and it just adds so much to LA at night, and it's shot so beautifully. Like, I love the cinematography in that movie. They shot for 107 days during the summer of 1995. The shooting was all done on location and around in Los Angeles. And
they shot in 1995 and it still came out in 1995.
Yeah, and
they shot in summer of 1995.
Yeah, and
holy moly!
Yeah, and they didn't use any sound stages, so they shot all on location, which is also really cool. They used a lot of combination of natural and practical light to capture the grittiness and the realism of the film, and it shows. I feel like there's some scenes where you can totally see that they're standing under the bright sun, and it's such an odd choice because, at least to me, where I feel like, okay, that's kind of cool, but at the same time, you wouldn't do that typically. But I like it because it gives the movie this gritty, dirty feeling that it almost like you are there, kind of. It's not like this movie-like thing. And the same with the night scenes. Some scenes are really dark, but with the HDR, they're even darker, and I feel like it works. It really works. And one more thing I wanted to add is the movie Collateral came out in 2003 with Jamie Foxx and Tom Cruise, also by Michael Mann. And those two movies share something because this movie starts with the subway in LA.
Mm-hmm.
Collateral ends with the subway in LA, while Collateral starts at LAX. Heat ends at LAX.
Oh, interesting.
And there are a lot of similarities, a lot of similar themes, like LA at night in Collateral. And I love Collateral as well because the soundtrack is great, the story is amazing, and I hope we do that movie at some point soon. Do you have anything to add?
Nope, I don't think so. I very much enjoyed it.
Okay. So
for the second time seeing it, I often forget movies that we watch, especially if it's been years since we watched them, and so it was like watching it for the first time, and it was enjoyable. It wasn't until the scene with her in the car that I was like, oh, I have seen this.
So Heat 2 came out in 2022, the novel, and it's currently being developed. And Adam Driver apparently came already up as a contender for a role.
Okay.
So yeah, it's going to be interesting if and when something would happen. So yeah, I'm very excited about that if that really turns out the way it will or might. Let's go to movie of the week.
Movie of the week. Nice.
Sorry. Okay, we watched the movies. We watched.
Did we watch some movies, really?
Ah, fuck. Okay, we do Paddington in Peru, The Gorge, Companion, and Fried Green Tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm really bad at remembering what movies are based on their titles.
Paddington in Peru.
Obviously, Paddington.
The Gorge was the
Remind
movie
me.
with on Apple TV Plus with Miles Teller with the things in the gorge.
Oh yeah.
In the
Yeah,
trench.
yeah.
Companion, the AI,
That was the AI one. Okay, that's
and
okay. I
Three
forgot.
Red Tomatoes
Yeah.
from last night.
Well, that's actually hard.
It's Paddington to me. I loved it.
I really loved it too, but I also really love Fried Green Tomatoes. I think
And
it's
it's a
just a
great movie.
classic
It's a great movie.
And I love storytelling like that
Yeah.
because they don't make movies like that anymore. That kind of storytelling.
It's hard, yeah.
They used to make them a lot, and now they don't really
That
make them
movie
anymore.
reminded me a lot of The Color Purple.
That reminded me a lot of Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
Just that style of storytelling I really, really like if it's done well. I really liked The Gorge, but it wasn't like, I don't know. It was beautifully shot. Like I feel like the images were really cool, but it was definitely more of like just a fun.
Yeah. Paddington. It's Paddington.
Okay, it's Paddington.
We need more Paddington. And
Paddington is great.
Paddington, it's the third movie. It's not. They changed a few things. That the director is not the same anymore. They switched out. Emily Mortimer came in for the mom.
Mm-hmm.
Although
it's interesting because we both didn't realize that until the end. I feel
right.
like.
And the thing is, I knew something was
she
off.
felt so right for the role.
But I liked her. I liked her too.
Yeah, but I also thought like when I first saw her on screen, I was like, why does she feel new? Like like
Douglas Wilson.
I had a hard time remembering if she was in the other ones.
Douglas Wilson did No Pressure, and I'm sure he did some really small movies. But considering that,
but Paddington is just so like heartwarming and so I don't know. It's just so. It's not. It's a kids movie, sure, but it's not. You know, they do such a good job of making it enjoyable for all viewers, and it's
the thing is, it's what I really liked about it is they
so heartwarming.
Again, with Antonio Banderas and Olivia Colman, they got two great actors who played kind of antagonists or. More or less, you know, it evolves a little bit. It's a little more complicated, and they obviously go to Peru and change the whole vibe of the story again. And because the first two movies are set in London, obviously, it's not topping the second one. Paddington 2 is the best.
Paddington 2 is one of the greatest movies of all time.
Honestly,
let's just be real.
I would even go so far as saying it's the best sequel ever made. I would
agree with that. But I also think it's one of the best movies of all time.
I agree.
Like
that movie
it's
works
up there
on and it's so weird because you think like it's a fucking kids.
It's not.
Alone the musical number by Hugh Grant. It's
all
not
brilliant.
Being talked about.
It's all brilliant. And the thing is, the third one for me was almost on par with the second one. I thought it was so good and so well done. The story was sweet and also creative, and I loved it. I thought it was great.
So yeah, great movie.
Recommend.
A new thing we try it. I don't know if it works. We go to Letterboxd and see what Heat has in terms of ratings, and it's at a 4.3 rating, which is actually pretty good for a Letterboxd reviewed movie. Letterboxd is usually a little, compared to 8.3 on IMDb.
I found one that I really like,
and
right in the beginning.
The cheered one.
What?
No, okay.
No.
And reviews. So you have a fun review that you like?
I have a fun one. Yeah, it's a 5-star review.
Yeah.
And it's just a quote from the movie between two people.
Yeah.
For me, the sun rises and sets with her man. Yeah? Yeah. Okay. That's the whole review.
Yeah. I like this one. It's a new one. Do you think people cheered when De Niro and Pacino had coffee?
What? Sorry.
Do you think people cheered at the cinema or at the theater when Pacino and De Niro had coffee at the one scene?
Was that's the review? Just asking that.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I hope so. Like it's
I don't think so, but
one of the biggest movie stars are sharing the screen together. That never happened before. That because in The Godfather 2, they didn't do that because it was separate timelines. They were in the movie together, but not in scenes together. So, I hope that people cheered. Like in, I don't know, the Endgame maneuver where all of a sudden Cap takes the hammer at Thor. So yeah.
Here's another 5-star review. You can, again, a quote, partly response. You can ball my wife, but you can't watch my television is the best line ever written. And I pray to God I get to use it one day.
Yeah, or it's cool when a bunch of geniuses at the height of their powers all converge on one single perfect project, and I totally agree.
This is my favorite rom-com.
It's honestly, if you have not seen Heat, and if you are into like heist crime thrillers, watch that movie. Do yourself a favor. It's fun. It's on Disney Plus. You can stream it probably somewhere else, or buy it on Amazon, or rent it. Honestly, nothing goes over physical. But it's really a great movie. It's one of the greatest movies ever made. If I would need to choose a movie that I would watch all the time, like the last movie or the only movie that I can watch, I would choose Paddington 2. But right after, I would choose Heat. So yeah, that's it, everybody. So if you want to, support us, if you want to help us with the podcast, please head over to our Patreon. It's in the description. Other than that, please share our YouTube, Spotify, or Apple, wherever you listen or watch the podcast. If you like the two angle camera thing, the thing is, it would be cool to add a third one where you see us again and conversing. But if you like that, please let us know in the comments on YouTube. That would be the best.
Yep.
And that's it.
That's it.